December 26th, 2004. One of the strongest earthquakes ever recorded struck off the west coast of Aceh, Indonesia. Within hours, the tsunami strikes, on a day that will never be forgotten.
Gempa dahsyat berkekuatan 8,9 skala Richter yang berpusat di Aceh dan gelombang air pasang tsunami.
Every direction, the water come and attack me.
No one is quite sure if these waves, these giant waves, will once again strike the shores of Sri Lanka and once again instill fear in the hearts of millions of residents here.
We don't have a tsunami warning.
And we are not quite understand about what is tsunami.
There was no way of warning because tsunami disasters was not on the agenda.
The only warning it came from people surrounding. It's still like, come on, the water is coming to our land.
Then we start to realize that it is something very big.
That wave is a good 15, 20 feet tall. Easy.
Like people around me saying like, I left my family, what's happened with my kids and children? They are very, very young. It was like 10 years ago and it's still fresh on my mind.
The tsunami of 2004 changed the way the world approached natural phenomenon. The scale and impact of the disaster forced governments and institutions to react and prepare their people.
The tsunami of 2004 was a wake-up call for many organisations, really in terms of joining up between those forecasting disasters and those having to respond to disasters.
The mechanisms to get information to people at risk didn't exist. People weren't educated about the event, and there were no monitoring systems within the Indian Ocean to detect whether a tsunami had been generated, how big it was, and the areas that it might affect.
Indian Ocean tsunami was an eye-opener actually for the disaster management community in the region, particularly in the Indian Ocean countries.
In the aftermath of the tsunami, the Asia-Pacific region embarked on a collective effort to build greater resilience to disaster. In 2005, the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, ESCAP, partnered with Thailand and Sweden to set up a trust fund to strengthen early warnings for tsunamis. The trust fund has grown to include 7 donor countries and has supported numerous projects and initiatives benefiting 19 countries in the region. Its work has included training local communities in emergency evacuation, installing new monitoring equipment, and supporting the establishment of the Indian Ocean Tsunami Warning System, which became operational in 2011. This new system is the cornerstone of the region's heightened level of preparedness for tsunami.
3 countries, Australia, Indonesia and India, have set up regional systems that can detect tsunamis and then detect earthquakes and then inform people if there is a threat coming by.
As a region, we have come a long way since the tsunami. We are far better prepared today than we were in 2004. Systems are now in place that we needed to maintain and keep upgrading. There is still much more work to do, especially to ensure that the most vulnerable and remote communities at the last mile are reached with timely warning information. Regional cooperation is key.
The challenge is to keep these systems going. That requires maintenance, it requires commitment of the institutions involved, it requires political commitment, it requires budgets to be in place, it requires, again, international cooperation.
The tsunami was instrumental in taking the world to a higher level of tsunami awareness. It took the event to get the warning systems in place, get the governmental and non-governmental systems to operate at the level that they should have been before, but they weren't. The tsunami and Hurricane Katrina and other incredible disasters, Haiyan, all prompted action inside and outside of government to operate at a higher level.
The most lasting legacy of the 2004 tsunami is that the whole world realised it is time for action to prepare communities for future disasters. In January 2005, in Kobe, Japan, 168 governments adopted the Hugo Framework for Action. This is a 10-year plan to reduce disaster impacts on nations and communities. The Hugo Framework for Action harnesses the vision, knowledge, skill, discipline, and reason of mankind against the brutal power of nature.
It's created a common language, a sense of perception, a direction given by its priorities and goals and action. So in literally almost every country in the world, it has actually started building the foundations of a system for managing risk.
Next March in Sendai, Japan, during the 3rd United Nations World Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction, the governments and non-governmental organisations will adopt the Hugo Framework for Action too, reconfirming their commitment to put money and efforts in making the world safer against disasters. The tsunami of 2004 will never be forgotten, and although much has been done during the past 10 years, more natural disasters will occur. Ongoing preparations for disaster events must therefore continue.